Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the True North Report. News everyone needs to know. So, let's talk about what's going on with Iran right now. Yesterday, I was live, and after I ended the stream, I ended up making my way onto Twitter, as I usually do, near the end of the night in order to sort of check up and see if there's any updates and they'd be done. And in that time, we were starting to hear about how President Trump had carried out a strike against Iran. Now, this strike ended up killing, ended up killing two people of value on there. It ended up killing a top Iranian military commander, Qasem Soleimani, who is the head of the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, and Abu Mahdi al-Muhadi, deputy commander of Iran-backed militias. He actually was the founder of Kataib Hezbollah, which was the militia that ended up besieging the U.S. Embassy on New Year's. So, as I started to follow everything that ended up happening, details were starting to come out, but one thing about it that was kind of bugging me, one of the reasons I ended up coming live today, is the fact that what I was seeing on Twitter. Now, of course, many people were talking about what ended up happening with this Iran strike, but what was bugging me is the fact that I was seeing people who claimed to be anti-war that were cheering this on. I saw people who claimed to be in the know about what's going on with the deep state and all that couldn't see this strike for what it truly is. And that is what was bugging me. So this is the man who ended up being killed. This is Qasem Soleimani. He's the one who was confirmed by the Pentagon being killed that day. And actually, the Pentagon ended up releasing details late last night where they said, at the direction of the president, the U.S. military has taken decisive defensive action to protect U.S. personnel abroad by killing Qasem Soleimani. Soleimani was actively developing plans to attack American diplomats and service members in Iraq and throughout the region. So that's coming from the Pentagon. Now, it's quite possible that this was what was being planned. In fact, I think it's very likely, judging what we know by Iran right now. But when I was writing about the situation about the U.S. Embassy, when the Iraqi militias that were backed by Iran were attacking them, I ended up saying that this embassy attack was in response to an airstrike that ended up happening the week before, in which there was, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, 25 militia members who were killed in that airstrike, and the airstrike was in itself a response to an American contractor, which means a private military corps, pretty much a mercenary, ended up getting killed under a rocket attack that ended up happening at a U.S. base. So this was all a response to a response, and then this was also what ended up happening with this guy, Soleimani. It was a response to the U.S. Embassy attack. Now, this is going to become a vicious circle. Nothing's going to change. But the danger that has been presented by this airstrike... Sorry, my dogs are going a little crazy upstairs. 1 second. So this was just a response to everything that's going on, and this is going to continue to happen. The Iranian government is now calling for vengeance against the U.S. for what ended up happening. This is an escalating situation. Now again, as I ended up saying, there was many people that were cheering on this airstrike. But I find that both the left and the right are making mistakes. They're making big mistakes on this. First, I actually wanted to take you to something that Tucker Carlson ended up putting out. This is up on my website, the True North Report, right on the front page. But what he had to say about this situation.
In this case, the very people demanding action against Iran tonight, the ones telling you the Persian menace is the greatest threat we face, are the very same ones demanding that you ignore the invasion of America now in progress from the South. The millions, the tens of millions of foreign nationals living among us illegally, the torrent, more significantly, of Mexican narcotics that has killed and disabled entire generations of Americans. Nobody cares, in case you haven't noticed. Pay no attention to all of that. These very same people tell us the real threat is Iran. Well, they're liars, and they don't care about you, they don't care about your kids. They're reckless and incompetent, and you should keep all of that in mind as war with Iran looms closer tonight.
So I like Tucker's take on it. There are very few journalists that I trust. But, or I wouldn't say trust. There's very few journalists that I like. But Tucker is one of them. I find that even though he works for a mainstream source, he's proven himself to be different than a lot of these, than a lot of the other journalists out there, a lot of the other anchors. But his take on it is, in my opinion, absolutely right. It's that they're trying to present this image of Iran as an imminent danger to the U.S. They're only an imminent danger to those who are in the vicinity over there. Iran is not going to be coming across the ocean in order to attack the U.S. The logistics of it is very difficult. If you want to move tens of thousands of troops halfway across the world, you need resupplying. Now, the U.S. can do this because they actually have allies and bases set around that make it a lot easier for them to do so. Iran doesn't have this same ability. So they're not the imminent threat that they want, but this has been going on for some time. This has been going on. Donald Trump himself has been trying to get into a war with Iran for a while now. We can look at what he's been doing since he came into office. We can see the changes that he's trying to make about how he wants to start a conflict in them, and the actions that he's taken, indirect actions that do end up affecting this. Now, before we get into that, I want to talk about the mistakes that are being made by the people on the left and the right. The mistakes that are being made by the people on the left is that they're forgiving a lot of what Iran ends up doing. In fact, the Globe and Mail ended up putting out about how Soleimani was an icon. This was up on their Twitter account. Why is he such an icon? They are ignoring the crimes against humanity and the war crimes that is carried out under Iran. They're ignoring the fact that Iran finances terrorism all over the globe. Now, that's the problem that the left is having with all this. They are putting all the blame on Donald Trump, none of the blame on Iran. The right is doing the opposite. They're putting all the blame on Iran, none of the blame on Trump or the U.S. foreign policy. Now, the right wing, is beating their chests, pumping this up as if it's a good thing. Now, they're either doing it deliberately or obliviously, but they are unaware that the fact that this is just escalated tensions in the region and the looming conflict that is coming between Iran and America. They are unaware, apparently, that the fact that Iran is backed by some superpowers, mainly Russia and China, and that if warfare did break out between the U.S. and Iran, there is at least the potential that one, if not both of these countries, would get involved with it. There's been, especially with China as recently, when it comes to the trade deal, there's been a lot of tension that's going on there. It's important to know, too, why is it that Iran doesn't like the U.S.? Why is it that they consistently have spoken out and used such inflammatory terms against the U.S., such as they are the great Satan and death to America? Well, you have to go back in the history books for that. It leads all the way back to the Cold War. People are familiar with the 1979 Iranian Revolution that ended up happening, but a number of people are unaware of what took place just before that. Now, going back to 1953, the CIA ended up financing and backing a coup. They ended up financing and orchestrating a coup, and that was backed by the U.S. government in Iran. And during that coup, they ended up expelling Premier Mohammad Mossadegh, and they ended up reinstating the Shah of Iran. Now, for the next 25 years or so, Iran was actually an ally to the U.S. during the Cold War. But that ended up changing because in 1978, the people of Iran ended up starting their own revolution in which they rose up and they overthrew the government. It actually started in 1978, And it ended up carrying over to 1979. And then this is the reason that they've had a grudge against America ever since. It's because America at one point displaced their government with a more favorable government. Now, that never sits well with the people of any country if that's what you're doing. This war with Iran doesn't benefit the US. There is no reason for them really to go to war with Iran. And in fact, it's actually going to be very difficult. This is not going to be like in Afghanistan or in Iraq. This is not just a desert country that they can pull up the tanks and roll on through the whole countryside. It's actually going to be quite difficult because if you look at Iran's terrain. Hold on. Where is it? Okay, so I'm full screening this just so you can see. So this is Google Earth. This is Iran. This whole area that you're seeing, I think you can see my cursor right now. But if you can't, it's this area right here. These are all mountain ranges. Iran is not the same as Afghanistan or Iraq. It's going to be logistically difficult. They can't just roll in the tanks, drive through the countryside towards the capital. You've got a big country. You look at the size of Iraq and you look at the size of Afghanistan. Iran is bigger than that. And their military may not be as strong as the US, but it's no pushover. This is going to get bloody if a war ends up breaking out. Many US soldiers are going to die. And this is probably going to end up worse than in Iraq. This is going to end up being another long-term warfare, which we're going to see even more, probably tens of thousands of American troops that are going to die. I actually think that if America goes to war with Iran, this is going to be the equivalent or something similar to Vietnam. That you're going to be having American soldiers coming back by the dozens, dead. You're going to have these body bags that are just being transported through. It's going to be incredibly unpopular, regardless of the people that are beating the drums of war right now. And the problem is, too, is that when you have all of these mountain ranges here, you can't really travel over them by foot. I mean, you could, but it's going to be very difficult. And that's not the way that the U.S. are going to go in. They're going to go in with choppers, and they're going to with air support. But these mountains make it very difficult to just strafe run a group of enemies in there. It's also prime for ambush. It's very good for ambushing, simply because the fact that they can hide in those mountains, they probably have tunnels and underground bases that are all throughout there. It's going to leave any choppers or fighters going over exposed to RPG and probably anti-aircraft missile turrets, which means it's going to make it even more difficult in order to get through. Now, the thing is that a lot of people don't want to admit the truth when it comes to what's going on right now, when it comes to the fact that Trump has been preparing for a war with Iran since he came into office. In fact, in the article I posted on the True North Report, I ended up saying this was a deep state strike. Now, many people might not believe that because they would say that, well, we see how they've been doing their very best to get Donald Trump out of office. The thing is that, and this is just what I think, but I don't believe that the deep state is after Trump anymore. I think they were. I mean, actually, it shows a lot of evidence that they were during the 2016 presidential debate. But since the Donald Trump of 2016 doesn't exist anymore. When he came into office, he changed very quickly. And he's not a threat anymore. He appears to be playing ball with them. This was the president that was going to end these stupid wars. That was going to pull the troops back. Pull them back. Bring them home. But since then, he's continued to keep up the military-industrial complex. He's continued to not go to war, but he's continued the conflict. I also think that's part of the reason is that, at least in the area, the wars were more or less wrapped up. Now it was just a matter of solving tying up a few loose ends, getting rid of ISIS, backing the so-called Iraqi government, even though it's not really the Iraqi government. Iraq is fractured right now. Iraq is not it's a country in name only. We call it a country. But right now, what's going on in Iraq is sectarian violence. It's ethnic violence. It's religious violence. It's a battle for control. It's not a functioning government. And this didn't, despite the fact what Mike Pompeo ended up saying about how this airstrike was supposed to relieve tensions in the Middle East, that's not what ended up happening. In fact, it hasn't been working for the last freaking 50 years. The last 50 years. So I don't actually believe that the deep state is after Trump anymore because he's playing ball with them. He's not on the side, from what I can tell. I don't even actually, I was going to say he's not on the side of the globalists, but then there's things he's doing, such as there's more immigration under Donald Trump. But he came in promising to drain the swamp, and instead of draining the swamp, he ended up bringing in a bunch of people that were part of the swamp. Military generals. He brought in friggin' John Bolton to be his national security advisor. The war hawk himself, who's been pushing for more war, specifically war with Iran. Now, Donald Trump did fire John Bolton, said he wasn't very happy with the way he was conducting himself or his push for more war, but I really think the problem was John Bolton was not popular with Trump's base. Not in the slightest. People didn't like him. And I think that's the main reason that he got rid of John Bolton as national security advisor. But it can't be denied that right now, the intelligence agencies and the military have been looking for a war with Iran. And I mean, one way you know that to be true is the fact you just need to look at the bases around Iran. Those are all U.S. military bases that are literally surrounding the country. It would appear as if they're preparing for a jump off for war. It would appear so because when the call comes, when the time is right to strike Iran, they can hit it from all sides simultaneously. So it'll appear, I actually think what's going to end up happening if there's a war is that U.S. troops will bust in and move pretty quickly through. They may not take them that long to actually get to Tehran itself, but the problem is the subjugation of the entire country. The U.S. is not a popular country out there. So they're not really going to be open and receptive to U.S. forces inside their base. You're going to have militias that are going to pop up. You're going to have the remnants of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard that are going to be fighting back, and it's going to turn into a guerrilla warfare which is probably going to go similar to the way it went in Vietnam. But Trump has been doing everything that he can. He's been doing everything that he can in order to cause this war. But why? Why does he want to cause this war? Well, this has been pushed for. This has been pushed for by Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. See, he's been the leading charge when it comes to the war with Iran. He's been doing it even before Donald Trump got into office, calling on the allies to condemn Iran, calling on the allies to deal with Iran. And there's only one way he's talking about dealing with Iran. He wants them invaded. Maybe not destroyed, but subjugated. And I mean, this is the man who was instrumental, almost single-handedly, got the U.S. to invade Iraq in 2003. This is him in front of Congress in 2002 right now. Here we go.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. And I think that people sitting right next door in Iran, young people, and many others will say, the time of such regimes, of such despots, is gone. There is a new age, something new is happening.
So even in that address, to go to war with Iraq, take out Saddam Hussein, he still makes reference to Iran, because Iran has always been the end goal. And he said, what did he say? If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you'll have positive reverberance across the region. Well, it didn't. It led to the deaths of over 1 million Iraqis. It led to the rise of ISIS, which is actually a CIA and Mossad creation. We have even the President Obama, who admitted that they were supplying ISIS back in 2013, I think it was, that they were supplying ISIS with weapons and supplies. And like I said before, you have religious and ethnic warfare that is just going on to this day. So it did not end well at all. You had 5,000 American soldiers who ended up dead in this war. Devastated a country, but it all went to benefit Israel, didn't it? Didn't it? And now he's been pushing for it ever since. I mean, it's no surprise, because Trump has been called the most pro-Zionist president in U.S. history. And there's no doubt that he's being influenced and manipulated by Israel. The amount of control that Jared Kushner has, the son, his son-in-law, Trump's son-in-law, married to Ivanka, who also happens to be friends with Benjamin Netanyahu, the amount of control that he has, the influence he has over there, the amount of influence AIPAC has over Donald Trump, and the things that have been implemented on Donald Trump that are just all in the benefit of Israel, that is infringing on the U.S. Constitution. And this war with Iran is the real reason that Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. Now, I was never a fan of the Iran nuclear deal. I never liked it because it gave Iran too much autonomy over their own enrichment facilities. I didn't like it because there was evidence of sanitization that were going on inside of those facilities. They were allowed to send their own samples off to the international community for them to test. We were pretty much, along with giving them the billions of dollars that was in frozen assets, along with that, it didn't really, from what I can tell, it didn't do a whole lot to actually curb them from creating and enriching uranium. It may have curbed their ability to possess the uranium, but it didn't actually do much when it came to preventing them from enriching it. This is why I didn't like the deal. But regardless of that, the reason that Donald Trump pulled out of the deal wasn't because it was a bad idea. It's because he pulled out because Israel wanted to. The first person to speak up and praise Donald Trump for doing it was Benjamin Netanyahu. They put stricter sanctions and boycotts on Iran. I mean, this is not the only thing, but these are all they're trying to do is they're poking at Iran. They were trying to get Iran to be the aggressors, to be the first one to make a move, so that way they can justify to the international community why they need to go to war with Iran. But if they don't, if they just declare war on Iran, that ain't going to look good on them. This is also the reason that Trump made a historical weapon sales to the Saudi Arabians in 2017. They paid $150 billion immediately, the Saudi Arabians, and there was going to be another $350 billion over the next 10 years for all of these weapons. So we're talking about $500 billion in weapons. Now, the reason that they're doing this had to do with what was going on in Yemen. The so-called civil war started up in 2015. The Yemen, quote-unquote, civil war was in fact a proxy war that was being fought by Iran and Saudi Arabia, because Iran had a lot of influence in the area, and Yemen is next door to Saudi Arabia. They didn't like that. But this was also a plan that was put in place by the US and by Israel, because they wanted to draw Iran out in Yemen, wanted to draw them out, not just supplies and giving money. They wanted to have Iranian troops on the ground in order to, once again, justify going to war. Saying, look at Iran trying to invade Yemen. But Iran didn't take Iran didn't fight. Not in the way that they wanted. Not enough to show the average person sitting at home that they are justified to go to war. And then there's been Netanyahu and him talking about Iranian nuclear weapons. He's been doing this for a long time. In fact, he probably... I'm just trying to remember exactly my history because I looked it up a while ago. This could be as far back as 1992. Although he may have been speaking about Iraq at that time, but I'm pretty sure he was talking about Iran. And this guy has given different timelines, always extending the timeline about when they're going to get nuclear weapons, when Iran is going to get nuclear weapons. It's always an immediate threat. They're on the verge of getting it. You need to do something now. He's been saying that since like 1992 or 95 or something like that. And we can even look to what he said back in 2012, where he was predicting that Iran getting nuclear weapons was just around the corner.
At stake is the future of the world, and nothing could imperil our common future more than the arming of Iran with nuclear weapons. In the case of Iran's nuclear plans to build a bomb, this bomb has to be filled with enough enriched uranium. And Iran has to go through 3 stages. The first stage, they have to enrich enough low-enriched uranium. The second stage, they have to enrich enough medium-enriched uranium. And the third stage and final stage, they have to enrich enough high-enriched uranium for the first bomb. Where's Iran? Iran's completed the first stage. Took them many years, but they completed it, and they're 70% of the way there. Now they're well into the second stage. And by next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb. Ladies and gentlemen, what I've told you now is not based on secret information. It's not based on military intelligence. It's based on the public reports of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Anybody could read them. They're online. So if these are the facts, and they are, where should a red line be drawn? A red line should be drawn right here. Before Iran completes the second stage of nuclear enrichment necessary to make a bomb, before Iran gets to a point where it's a few months away or a few weeks away from amassing enough enriched uranium to make a nuclear weapon. And I believe that faced with a clear red line, Iran will back down. And this will give more time for sanctions and diplomacy to convince Iran to dismantle its nuclear weapons program altogether.
So that was in 2012. And he was saying that by latest would be summer of 2013, Iran was going to be pretty much done the final step of enriching uranium, and they will have a bomb within a few weeks to a few months. So before it even hit 2014, they should have had a bomb. But they don't. And this has not been, once again, the first time. You can go back and check it out where he's been talking over the years. They're just about to get a bomb. They're a year away. They're a few months away. Never comes true. Kind of like what's going on with climate change right now. All these predictions about the doomsday and these terrible consequences that humanity is going to face that aren't coming true. It's the same type of thing when it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu. But he hasn't stopped. He hasn't stopped. Because the guy, even as recently as, well, actually, there's something even more before that, but if you even go back to 2017, he was, it was actually 2018. He ended up making a public appearance where he said that Israel has gotten 100,000 documents. 100,000 documents that prove that Iran has lied about making nuclear weapons. Let me ask you this. What did you see from those documents? He didn't show any documents. He didn't lay out and say, here on this document, on this page, we can see where they are enriching uranium. These documents that they apparently got from Iran were in the basement, locked in huge safes of an underground secret bunker, secret facility. Yet somehow, Israeli Mossad agents managed to sneak out get in there, figure out where they are, sneak out 100,000 documents proving this, which came to an accumulation of about half a ton of weight. Get them out of Tehran, or whatever part of Iran it was in, and get them all the way back to Israel. And get all these documents, all without Iran knowing. And what did they show? They're there to make a big announcement about how they got these documents. Crack open the books, show us. Didn't show us a thing. And then even by September 2019, he was once again in front of the press, giving another big presentation about how they have detected locations where Iran was conducting nuclear weapons tests. Once again, with no additional details given. It's ironic. It's ironic for Israel to be freaking out about nuclear weapons, considering they have nuclear weapons and did not sign the Nuclear Proliferation Agreement. Every other country that has nuclear arms, just about anyway. Almost every other country, at least Western nations, allied nations, NATO nations, have signed on to the Nuclear Proliferation Agreement, but not Israel. And how did they get their nuclear weapons? They stole the technology from America. Israeli spies were caught and arrested with the plans with how to get nuclear information. And if I'm remembering correctly, they even stole uranium. But they're worried. They're worried about Iran. And have provided no additional details about it, but are trying to use it as justification in order to go to war. Now, why would Israel want to invade Iran? Now, of course, the obvious is there, the fact that they are enemies with Iran, and Iran poses a threat to Israel. That's the most obvious explanation, of course. But there's more to it than just that. I believe this all has to play out with what is happening with the Greater Israel Project, which I'm pretty sure I've talked about before on here. The Greater Israel Project is a plan to return Israel to its biblical boundaries, since back in the Bible, the Holy Land at the time, the land that was promised to the Israelites, it stretched from the Euphrates River to the River Nile. So from Egypt all the way up, including parts of Lebanon, parts of Syria, parts of Iraq, even parts of Saudi Arabia, actually. So do you think it is a coincidence that Lebanon has been under attack by Israel, that Syria has been under attack by Israel, that Iraq has been under attack by Israel? And they're starting to annex more and more technology. Now, Iran, as far as I can tell, does not fall into the Greater Israel Project, but part of the Greater Israel Project involves fracturing the nearby Arab states. And one reason is to allow it much easier for Israel to annex the territory that they need without the repercussions from people inside the area. And also, I believe that it's because they want to be the dominant power in the region, and eventually the world. because they're going to take all of this land, which includes a lot of oil fields. A lot of oil fields. And their plan is to take these oil fields for themselves, to which they will become one of the major oil exporters in the world. And this is why going to war with Iran is necessary for them. But they want to use the American soldiers as their cannon fodder. They want to use them as their battering ram. Their plan is to almost literally achieve their dreams while walking over a river of American blood. They have been doing it for decades. Iraq the overthrow of Saddam did not benefit America. It benefited Israel. And then at the same time, we've talked a lot about how there's a lot of Jewish people that are promoting open borders across Europe, across North America. And where do they come from? They come from these war-torn areas where a lot of the U.S. and European armies and Canada, Afghanistan, they're coming from these areas that are right around Israel, where these wars are being fought on their behalf. So we get flooded with countless millions amounts of immigrants that are then coming in, causing violence, committing crimes, rape, just amount of civic strife amongst these host countries that they come to. Sowing the discord. Yesterday, when I was live, I spoke about how in Lauren Southern's documentary, Borderless, she ended up showing one person that was coaching immigrants about how it was easier to get into Europe. All these countries, you claim you're a refugee, you claim you're a Christian, you claim that you are persecuting your own country for, your religious beliefs, maybe you're gay or something like that. And it turns out that woman who was coaching these people was an Israeli who was vehemently opposed to any non-Jews coming into Israel. So it was okay to flood every other country, all the European countries, with all these immigrants, but don't you fucking dare even think about open borders in Israel. She'll fight you on that. Rules for thee, not for me. And like I was saying a little bit earlier, I've become much more suspicious I would even say more recently, about Trump. But not just Trump, a lot of populist leaders, about what their true intentions are. So for instance, I stated a little bit earlier that Donald Trump, the deep state is not going after Donald Trump anymore, because the 2016 Donald Trump was a threat to them, but not the 2019, not the President Trump, the candidate Trump was a threat to them. He was a threat to the military-industrial complex. He was a threat to the CIA opium trades, because right now in Afghanistan, what are American soldiers doing? Guarding the poppy fields where the CIA creates the heroin and brings it into the country and then sells it for a profit. He was also against mass surveillance. He was against the intelligence agencies. He came in promising to drain the swamp. Now, a lot of people right now are talking about the impeachments of Donald Trump, about how, this is also proof of the deep state and how it's against them. But let's analyze that for a minute. Now, Jesse Ventura, people probably know him. He's, on Conspiracy Theories, WWE, been in movies. He's also the former governor of Minnesota. One thing that I always found interesting is what he said about politics. He said politics reminded him of his time in the WWE. Because in the WWE, you come out and you hate your opponent. You talk a lot of smack, a big game. You go out there and you pummel each other. But then behind the scenes, you're friends, you're laughing, you're getting the wives and the families together. He said that was almost identical what happened in politics. These opposing parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, would come out in front of the cameras in Congress, and they would, or whatever his state equivalent was of Congress, they would come out and they would face off against each other, throw jabs, throw names, you're a traitor, this and that. But then behind the scenes, they were laughing with each other, they're friends, they're getting together with each other's families. Now the Democrats really appear to dislike Trump, putting a wrench in everything he does. Very similar to what the Republicans did to Obama, actually, which the Democrats pissed and moaned about during the time. But let's analyze this impeachment. Donald Trump was impeached by the Congress. Now, the ways that the articles of impeachment are supposed to work, it then moves on to the Senate. Now, as of now, the Senate would not impeach Donald Trump. It doesn't appear it would go that way, so he would not be thrown out of office. It's dominated by the Republicans, not going to vote him out. But now they're withholding the articles from going to Senate. Why the fuck are they doing this? You could make the argument that they're waiting for another smoking gun to come up, something that would turn Republicans against Trump in order to make sure they vote for that. But what if it's just smoke and mirrors? What if it's just illusions? Because this is the way it's starting to seem, to me anyway. I'm really starting to question this, because there was a video I saw very recently that Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, who is third in line for the presidency, she stated that something along the lines of, if America crumbles, they will forever be there to support Israel. It's not an exact quote, but it's something along those lines that pretty much similar, I guess you could say, to what happened, what Charlie Kirk said about how, America is a nation of ideas. If America, the landmass, dies, but all those ideas exist, that's America. But not Israel, it's not Israel. Israel's different because they have a holy connection to the land. It's kind of the same thing. America can crumble, but even if America's crumbling, even if our people are starving and having trouble, we're going to be there to support Israel. And Chuck Schumer, I believe it was last year, was implementing a bill that would have pretty much outlawed any sort of anti-Semitism, any sort of criticism of Israel and Jewish people. Now that pretty much got implemented itself by Donald Trump in an executive order very recently. The executive order where Alan Dershowitz, Jeffrey Epstein lawyer, praised Trump. Alan Dershowitz, who has also been accused of raping underage girls, was praising Trump. And I believe that he actually did say that Trump is the most pro-Zionist president ever, or pro-Jewish or something like that. Now, what if there's the whole idea that presidents are selected, not elected? What if this is true for Donald Trump? What if he was another selected candidate? That he may have come in full of piss and vinegar with this idea of changing America for the better. But the more things went, the more he became aware, the more they sat down and talked to him and said, that's not going to happen. You don't run this country, we do. You do what we say, or you're not going to be president. Hillary Clinton will be president. Because she'll play ball. We know Hillary Clinton will play ball. And it appears to me that that's what Trump's doing. He's playing their game. And this goes back to the idea of nationalist and populist leaders. They come out and present themselves one way, but then they never actually live up to their expectations, do they? I mean, I'm in the middle right now of writing a few-part series on articles on my website where I'm talking about this in Canada. How someone like Doug Ford came in making all these promises. He seemed to be a populist candidate. But that all changed. things that he was promising he'd fight against, he stopped fighting against them. This was a man that came in and said, well, Justin Trudeau wants to implement a carbon tax. I'm not going to allow him to do it. And if he says I have to, I'm going to say the same thing his father said, just watch me. He promised to stop the LGBT agenda in schools. Ain't really done that now, has he? Very, very little. Oh, I'm going to roll it back, the sex ed curriculum back to 1998, but he's still fired over bullshit reasons. The one woman part of his cabinet that was actually there to fight back against that agenda. And then Jason Kenney over in Alberta is the same way. Jason Kenney is very pro-immigrant. Always has been. He said he's going to fight the carbon tax. Did you know that he implemented a carbon tax himself? This carbon tax that Alberta has wasn't implemented by Justin Trudeau. Jason Kenney decided what the carbon tax was. And Ford actually recently asked for more immigrants in Ontario, so this is kind of what I'm talking about. And Trump is the same thing. Trump was a pressure valve put in place. When they're starting to realize that the population is getting angry, and they fear that it's on the point of revolting, they put in a candidate like this. A candidate who's going to come in, make these promises, and defuse all that build-up pressure. And at least buys them time. It may not be a permanent solution, but everybody calms down. And it may take them a few more years, a few more elections before they're riled up like that again. Is it any coincidence that all these populist and nationalist leaders all around the country, not even the country, sorry, all around the world, in Europe and America and Canada, are Zionist supporters? No, that's very doubtful. Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, even Maxime Bernier. He didn't talk about it much, but you can find the video where he's talking about we stand with Israel, we support Israel. And then there's Q. The so-called insider with Q clearance who's passing along information to the people. Supposedly, it not just has his ear to the ground, but knows what's going on with intimate details. But he can't give you more than a few snippets here and there. Nobody knows who he is. Not even the intelligence agencies. But all he can give you is little snippets, a few vague phrases. A few vague phrases, nothing, no solid details. And all he tells you is trust the plan. Despite what he knows, despite the fact that he knows Trump is tied to political elites, that he's tied to Jeffrey Epstein, his past relationship with the Clintons, his unwavering support for Israel. Despite this, he just tells you, trust the plan. What he's telling you, he tells you, do your own research. Well, what he is really saying is, don't question Donald Trump. Sure, do your own research, but trust the plan. Trust Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to set you free. He's going to make this all right. He's going to drain the swamp. He's a fake insider. And if I had to guess, most likely an intelligent asset or agent who gives you breadcrumbs when you're starving. Gives you breadcrumbs. Just enough to fill your stomach, enough so you stop complaining, but not enough to actually fill you up. And it blinds his supporters to the reality of what's going on out there. The amount of people that I've seen that are supposedly know what's going on, know about the deep state, follow Q, where we go one, we go all. All these people that are then, I stand with Israel. Apparently so blind, so awake, and yet so blind at the same time. This is what Q has done. He deliberately ignores Israel's influence on the president and U.S. politics, and it is not a mistake. So that is the truth of what's going on with Iran. The Iran attack was a deep state attack. A deep state attack in order to draw Iran out into the open. This attack on the U.S. embassy was justification for them to commit this attack, is justification for them to put more troops on the ground over there. I don't even know if Iran actually had plans to commit more attacks against American soldiers after the U.S. Embassy attack. It's possible, that's what the Pentagon says, but I don't know that to be sure. But the real reason was to draw an open war with Iran, destroy the country from within, and it ain't doing it for the benefit of America. It's being done for the benefit of Israel. This was Benjamin Netanyahu's plan. This was Israel's plan. This is the political elite's plan. Because you'll notice almost all the political elites are Zionists. You have a choice. You can go for globalist puppets like Justin Trudeau, or you can go for Zionist puppets like Donald Trump. Those are your two choices. Or you can choose not to play the game. That's the third option that nobody really likes to talk about. Don't play the game. Don't support either. And speak out against both. Because whether you think or not that this is what's actually going on, it's quite clear that this is the truth. I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy, but I see those as well, not just the Q-tards, but the people in Canada, the amount of people that are aware of what's going on, and then are saying, well, I support Andrew Scheer. I stand with Scheer. The CPC is the way to go. The same CPC, not just globalists, but Zionists at the same time. This was the CPC. You know, one of Andrew Scheer's policies was going to be to move the Canadian embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, just like Donald Trump did. Unwavering support for the state of Israel. Why? Do you have unwavering support for the country of France? Do you have unwavering support for the country of Great Britain? You support these countries, but not to nearly the same extent that these leaders support Israel. The influence of the Israeli government is spread all across the world. It's got its tentacles in very deep in the U.S., but it's also got its tentacles in Canada, and never forget it. And once again, Israel is trying to achieve their dream walking over a river of American blood. And that river of blood will eventually turn into a river of tears of all the American mothers who lost their sons in this stupid war carried out for a foreign nation. And the amount of people that apparently can see the truth that are cheering this on is startling to me. Startling. These are not people that are going to join the military. These are not people that are going to go over and fight. One reason I don't advocate for war is because I'm not the one who's going to be going over and fighting it. And I'll be fucking damned if I'm going to be the one to condemn someone else to death to go fight another pointless war if it's not going to be me. If I was a military man and I felt that war was justified, then yeah, I'd advocate for it because I'd be going over there and fighting. But are you? If you advocate for a war with Iran, for an attack on Iran, are you going to be the one that goes over, puts your life at risk to fight this war? You better ask yourself that. Thank you all for listening to the True North Report. News everyone needs to know. If you like my content, please like and subscribe. Please share. And as always, please check out the TrueNorthReport.org. I update the website daily, post my own articles, post videos, as well as videos towards other channels that I find are relevant. Documents and documentaries are on there as well. Thank you all. Take care of yourselves.